According to Colin Cowherd, quote, I've talked with an NFL exec last night, very well connected, which let me pause there for a second, okay? There's nothing that, like, pet peeve as a journalist, very few things irk me the way you have to say something like very well connected, top of the line, this guy knows. No, just say source, okay? I spoke to an NFL exec last night. That speaks volumes. That's enough, okay? Very well connected makes me not believe that that's not as connected as you want it to be. Quote, very well connected. And this is a keep your head on a swivel Aaron Rodgers. I'm told the Steelers really like Jaylen Milro. 21st pick, first round. So if Aaron signs with Pittsburgh, it's going to become Kirk Cousins. They're taking a quarterback. If the 21st pick, if the 21st pick, Milro's not taken, Pittsburgh is leaning now and taking him. I want to address this, but I also want to get to Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette saying that the Steelers are stacking up picks for next season, which I think is the better conversation to have, the more important conversation to have. I also don't think it rules out Jaylen Milro or any other quarterback in 2025, and we'll get to why here in a second. Could I be very honest with you? And could I say something that maybe I maybe shouldn't be saying, but I feel I have to say, okay? The Steelers have interest in Jaylen Milro. They do. They think Jaylen Milro is an incredible athlete, and they are very impressed with what he can do. And, the Lamar Jackson comparison obviously is going to pay dividends and all that stuff. But Jaylen Milro is not the Steelers' first round pick. And everything I've been told is that Jaylen Milro is not the Steelers' first round pick, and that they're not interested in Jaylen Milro as their first round pick. That's not even where they're looking. That they don't want a first round quarterback in general because they understand that there are other needs with better players that they can go after. But I've heard two names. I won't mention the second, okay? Jaylen Milro was one. And in that conversation, words like first round smokescreen have been used. And you got to think, where are they going? Because I think they have interest in Jaylen Milro. I think that they would draft Jaylen Milro in the third round. I think they'd consider moving up for Jaylen Milro. And that's, those are conversations that have been had too. Like, I've heard those things of the Steelers having that second, third round interest in a guy that has a ton of potential, aka Jaylen Milro. They think Tyler Shuck could also be in that conversation unless he moves up. But, the Steelers are always a little bit behind on that stuff. So they're probably still looking at Tyler Shuck as like a third round pick when the rest of the NFL is like, that guy could go 15th. And they're like, no, dude, third round. What are we talking about? I've heard they could, and they do have interest in those guys. I've heard Quinn Ewers is very high on their list, like potentially their top option on that list when it comes to that third round slot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've heard Jaylen's on there too, but I would not go around believing that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at Jaylen Milro as a first round pick. I don't know if a team is going to. I'm sure somebody will at some point. But I would imagine that it's the time of year, and maybe I'm the one getting duped here. I'll always acknowledge maybe I'm the one getting duped. But it's the time of year where stuff starts coming out where you start going, nope, that's not what I'm hearing. That's not connections with me. And yeah, we'll push this narrative, but we just want to push this narrative because we want this guy instead. We don't want people to be on the Emeka Ibuka train. We don't want people to be on the Kenneth Grant train. We don't want people to be on the Quinn Ewers train because he might generate the Tyler Shuck attention, the Jaylen Milro attention that draws him and generates more interest. And they're looking at guys like Quinn Ewers saying, reliable third round pick that we feel good about. Jaylen Milro's in that conversation for sure. For sure. 21st overall. Look, I could be wrong. Again, maybe I'm the one getting duped here, but I find that incredibly hard to believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers would draft Jaylen Milro in the first round. Your thoughts?
Yeah, what I'll say is this. I don't doubt, like similar to what you said, I don't doubt that the Steelers and Mike Tomlin especially have a lot of interest in Jalen Milrow as a prospect. But
Yeah.
they also had a lot of interest and really liked, that's the comment we always hear, that's the quote. They really like this player. They
Yeah.
really liked Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
They
They did.
really liked Jalen Hurts. You know who else they really liked? Malik Willis. How
Yes.
many of them ended up drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers? Goose egg,
0.
zero, nada. So they could really like Jalen Milrow, but that doesn't mean they're going to reach for him, which is exactly what picking him at 21st overall would be. So I guarantee you that Mike Tomlin really likes Jalen Milrow. But what I will not guarantee you is that he is going to be a first round pick, particularly to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21st overall.
I agree. I just find that so terribly hard to believe. Like, just uh, the what you would be, and this leads into Ray Fittipaldo saying that he believes that the Steelers are adding comp picks and playing the draft game right now so that next year they can load up and say, okay, here you go. Let's go up and get our franchise quarterback. And I believe that. Like, I believe that's what their plan is Aaron Rodgers this year, draft somebody that is going to develop, that could turn into a starting quarterback in the NFL, and have that person compete with whoever you draft to be your franchise quarterback a year from now. That way you have options. And people will say, it's crazy. Why would you draft somebody this year if you're going to go draft somebody next year? Why would you waste that draft pick? Because the Steelers don't want to take a shot and end up with Kenny Pickett again and no backup plan. That's why they want to do it. Because they need a guy right now that can develop for a year and challenge whoever that guy is. Because if that guy comes in next year and stinks, or if that guy comes in next year and turns into RG3, you better have Kirk Cousins. And that's who they're looking at. That's what they're saying this year's draft is we need our backup plan. We need our plan B next year. How do we get that guy? Jalen Milrow is the best candidate you can go get in that class. That's easy. I don't think that he develops enough in a year to be a guy that challenges a Garrett Newsome or I hope they don't draft Drew Aller, but a Drew Aller or an Archie Manning. But he's a guy that, if he does, could actually put up a fight to win that job over any of them. He could be that guy. And again, I think chances are slim that he does, but he's the only one that makes sense in that class to go do that in the third round. Unless you're going to be safe with a guy like Quinn Ewers, maybe Will Howard, although I think I'd go Quinn Ewers over Will. As crazy as that sounds, I think I'd go Quinn Ewers over Will Howard. I just think Quinn Ewers had great weapons, but also was just a leader. He was just a guy that was in there just leading an offense, had all the pressure in the world on him and stood tall behind it. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a team like the Steelers. But this year it's Aaron Rodgers, and then you go next year and you go big for your quarterback. But this year's draft, it's about finding competition for next year, not finding a starter. And Jalen Milrow is like, you ruin the whole thing to go back to back. You might as well trade this first round pick for next year's first round next year so that you could really move up to get somebody. If that's your plan, is to draft Jalen Milrow in the first round, if you're the Steelers, because it makes no sense to me.